Hello and welcome to JTV Instagram Live. I'm your host, Janette Burke. This is our new series featuring book authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, and small business owners. Today, I am joined by Cheyenne Burnett, who is here to talk to us about expertise as a health and wellness expert for women, particularly in the area of breast implants. So if you have had breast implants or thinking of having breast implants, you're in the right place because Cheyenne's going to tell us what we need to know. So welcome to JTV Instagram Live Short, Cheyenne, and let's just get right into it. How did you become an expert for women in this particular field of breast implants? Through your podcast, your book, your coaching, your consulting? How did it come about?
I did not know that that's what I was signing up for. I a whole different expectation for my career goals and things, but at 19 I got breast implants and I had them for 10 years, and in that 10-year timeline I developed a lot of different chronic illness symptoms that I later learned was because of my breast implants. And so I went through a pretty extensive journey. I basically, my breast implants almost killed me, and I had to really reevaluate what beauty meant and how important my health was. And that journey led me to a whole new evolution of self-love and health. And I had to share it because there's no way I could feel this good after feeling that bad and not help other women do the same.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. So you talked about the symptoms. So what are some of those symptoms that we'd be aware of if they have had the implants? And then we'll talk a little bit about what they should consider or know before they go ahead with the breast implants. So what are the symptoms that you experience, and what are some of the common symptoms that a person who has had breast implants that were not effective in their body, or who went through the breast implant illness that you had, what would they be looking for? What would they experience? How would they know that perhaps their body was rejecting the implant?
That is a great question. And there's actually more than 50 serious side effects associated with breast implants and breast implant illness. But what's really important to understand is it doesn't impact all of us the same way for multiple reasons. One, there's multiple manufacturers. And because of that, there's a different cocktail of heavy metals and chemicals in each variation of breast implants. And so one breast implant may have a really high dose of one heavy metal, and another may have a really high dose of a different chemical. So those are going to impact the immune system differently. Also, our immune systems respond to things differently, right? Your immune system may respond in a totally different way to the exact same chemical that mine does. And so because of that, this illness impacts us. So the symptoms are such a wide range, right? They can be mild to something like acne, which I had really bad early on. It can be really bad acne, it can be mild acne, it can be hormonal imbalances, or it can be things like severe chronic fatigue. It can be joint pain, it can be muscle pain, it can be IBS symptoms, MS symptoms, irritable bowel syndrome symptoms. It can be migraines. I ended up in the hospital with crippling migraines and was told I was going to be on medication for headaches for the rest of my life, and haven't had a single headache since my breast implants were removed. So it can really impact a lot of us differently, but there are 50 key symptoms that most of us experience one or two of. And then from there, it depends on your particular immune system response.
But of course, some of those symptoms could also be indications of other things going on in your body, not necessarily because of the breast implants. So is there a specific test that can be administered, or a blood test or something, to know whether or not it's the cause of the implants themselves, or to see if perhaps saline is leaking from one of the implants, something like that that would affect your body?
I love this question because
Is there a test?
no, there is not one specific test, because there's not one specific symptom, right? And so they can't go in and currently there's not a test that says, yes, your implants are harming you. But what we do know is this: we know for sure, and this is an unpopular opinion. Trust me, I wanted my breast implants, right? And so if this is at all triggering to anybody hearing this, like I didn't want my breast implants to be something that was making me sick. I wanted to keep them. But unfortunately, every single one of us that have breast implants, our immune systems are impacted because it's a foreign item in our body that is not supposed to be there. And so immediately your immune system goes on high alert. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go down this massive rabbit hole of chronic illness and be debilitated by headaches like I did, right? It could just be significant hormonal imbalances that you can combat with different things. That can be symptoms that you feel like you can regulate in your day-to-day. But it is impacting your immune system and your immune system's ability to fight. They are associated with 3 or more that we know for sure they're causing cancers. And so you are at risk of breast implant caused cancers if you have them. But the hardest thing about breast implant illness is there's not a test, right? You can't go into the doctor. I had so many blood tests done and all of my blood work comes back normal. I talk about this. My podcast episode this week is on the Explant Secrets podcast is about testing, because there's a lot to understand there, because you can't just go in and have your blood tested for it. All of my labs came back normal for multiple years and nothing was normal. So
so I have 2 questions now. Does it increase more? By increase, I mean, does your chances of having a reaction or symptoms to the breast implants increase more if you do it more than once? Like I know people, I'm sure you do too, that had multiple breast surgeries, augmenting every single time, right? And maybe also changing the type of saline or non-saline implant that they chose, hoping to have improvements. So does that have any effect, or does breastfeeding have any effect?
They both do, absolutely. So what ends up happening, imagine an orange, right? This is the best way to explain it. If you have an orange, the inside of the orange that we eat is like your implant. And what happens is your body creates a natural form over the implant of scar tissue that's called a capsule. And that's like the peel of the orange. And your body does that because this is a foreign item that it knows is dangerous, and it's trying to separate it from your internal organs, right? From your important organs. And what happens is when you have your breast implants removed, if it's not removed through en bloc or total capsulectomy, that scar tissue is left there. And that scar tissue actually absorbs all of the chemicals and heavy metals and things that these things are leaking into our systems from day one. And there's science that proves that it's happening from day one, regardless of if they're ruptured or not. So this tissue becomes very toxic. And what happens is if a surgeon goes in and is just replacing them, a lot of times they'll just pop open that pocket, releasing any liquid or potential toxins into the body and replacing a new implant. So you have that toxic tissue is still impacting your immune system, is still responding, and then you have the opportunity for that barrier to now spill into the body, and then a new implant is replaced and you have another opportunity for more immune system response. So it absolutely can. Breastfeeding, our bodies go through all these changes, right? We get bigger, we get heavier, we get warmer, we get all of those things impact the implant over time. And so absolutely breastfeeding can cause, like, my symptoms got substantially worse after carrying my son and breastfeeding. So after my son was about a year old is when my symptoms got so bad that I was hospitalized, and I had my implants for almost more than 8 years at that point. So it definitely can impact the body. And obviously there's so much to this and we have such little time. So trying to make sure I give you all.
Yeah. So I'm gonna structure it a little bit more, because there's 2 things I want to get out in the time that we do have left. And that is, So you yourself had your implants removed.
Mhm.
And how was that like psychologically affecting you? Because you went for the beauty standard of I need to be voluptuous, I need to have large bosom if I wasn't actually inclined that way or born that way. And so many other women feed into this too. But then you had them removed. And
Mhm.
how were you able to adjust yourself to the body and go back to what God gave you and not have what was enhanced? Was that like a depressing thing for you, or were you able to accept?
All of the above. It was all of it. It was an absolute roller coaster of emotion. Um, Ultimately, what it came down to, like I said, I really wanted my breast implants, right? I really loved my breast implants. I felt like they really fulfilled something that I was missing. Um, I make the joke all the time though that if I had just spent the money on breast implants with a really good therapist, I would have been in a totally better situation. But
Mm.
I bought them because I didn't think I was good enough, right? And that's absolutely not true. And so confronting surgery to remove my breast implants really meant I had to confront all of those insecurities that got me to the point where I decided to get breast implants in the first place. And so that was really challenging. And I did have to go, okay, is my health important enough? And I came to the conclusion, I have 3 babies I want to be there for. And so I decided that my health was important enough to remove my implants, but it was not an easy thing to walk myself through psychologically. And thankfully,
Mhm.
I've been able to work with some of the best therapists who I've had on my podcast, and I've worked with my courses too, to contribute to women's health, because ultimately I am now in a place where I actually love my body so much more today than I ever did with breast implants. But it's a journey. It took a minute to get there.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you what, when you feel like you're dying and you're in a bed feeling sick all the time, great tits doesn't really mean anything. But
Mhm.
smaller chested,
Okay,
he is healthy.
right. So we're almost at a time. So there's one last thing I really want to get out before I close out this interview for those who are listening, because I think this is something that a lot of women consider, and we all, not just for breast implants, although that's your focus, but,
Yeah.
just in general, the standard of beauty, as you said, every kind of nip tack known to man. But I'm going to focus on this one. So I want you to share one advice that you would have for, let's say, a woman who's now considering a mommy makeover, which would be the breasts uh, and the tummy tuck, or a young girl going in to have the breast done. What would you say to them to consider? What is the one thing they should consider, and the most important thing they should ask the doctor, the plastic surgeon, before they proceed?
I think that's a great question. So I,
I'd like to hear
I
your
would
tips.
say understand that a plastic surgeon's goal is to get you to have plastic surgery. A naturopath's goal is to get you to use natural tools to heal, right? There's a surgeon's going to cut. And so you need to decide for yourself what you really want before you walk in. And that's where advocating for yourself is so important. You need to educate yourself on what the real risks of these things are before you walk in, because it's a sales office and it's a business, and their priority is not your health. And that sucks, but that's the truth. And so ultimately, when it comes like a young woman who's never had breast implants, I would say please consider that you are enough as you are right now, and maybe there's something that we just need to find together to help you see that, right, rather than spending this money and
Mhm.
having a chance at a decade long struggle of chronic illness like I did. For the mom who feels like
Mhm.
she's lost herself, there's other ways. I'm not telling you that plastic surgery is never the option. Like, I totally get it, right? I've done it, I've had it. But there's other ways, and there's really important things to understand about the risks of plastic surgery. Like you can do fat transfers now. They can take fat from your thighs and put it in your boobs instead of a foreign object. There's other ways to do it. And so you really need to understand what your options really are. Don't walk into that office and think that that doctor has your best interest in mind and that their answer is the only answer, because it's not.
Okay. So that's pretty good advice. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of the interview. I know we could talk about this a lot. We could debate it on and on because I have a lot of interest also in this subject. And I think for one women audience, they do too, because they're in that age group where unfortunately, society puts a lot of pressure on women, and there is a lot of pressure to change your body, look and way, advertising pictures, modeling pictures, and it's often unrealistic because the photos are doctored, and people don't realize that as much as they actually are. But these standards of beauty, I think you mentioned it earlier in the interview, have to change. And people, I think what your message is that we have to learn to love ourselves the way we are, the way God made us, and really do our homework before we invest money and time and possibly health risks into having breast implant or other procedures that there may be alternatives to that are less risky. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And I also want to mention that you have a website, which will be linked below, called explantSecrets.com. And you have podcast we mentioned, as well as coaching programs and what have you. You are an advocate for women and women's rights and health, particularly specialized in this breast implant area. And that if women are considering having the surgery, or they have had the surgery and are now suffering consequences of it or symptoms, you're there to talk to. So I just want to put that there. The link for the website will be in the show notes below. And I want to thank you, my audience, for taking this time to join us today. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off for JTV Instagram Live. Please remember to join us every Wednesday right here on Instagram. Bye for now.